Hey guys, so today I'm going to show you how to program in TI Basic. The program we're going to write is a quadratic equation solver for a quadratic. It'll find the roots for you. Very similar to the program that we uploaded to our graphing calculators in the last video. I'll put a link right here. So the programming language, like I said, is TI Basic. And there's a reason why it's called Basic, because it's very similar to like Visual Basic or Basic, and hence the name. It is a very simple, basic sort of language. Not as complex as Java or C++. So I'm going to show you the interface of this. Like I said in the last video, we're using TI Connect CE to use this programming suite so we can program this. So right here is our text area. We can do text. Obviously that's not a program, so we don't want that. But to start out the program, we're going to do control. So I guess I should also explain, this is basically our catalog, if you will. In fact, it even has a word catalog here, and it has every single function that you could ever call for programming a program in TI Basic. So first off, for almost every program, you're going to need clear home, which is right here. So what you're going to do is click on it and then drag it up to where you want it. Alright, so I should say first off that it is very important how many spaces you have or where your spaces are in TI Basic. For instance, if I had a space right here, it would run an error. But in fact, doing that, there is no error. It's kind of different than most programming languages, especially a language like Java or C++, where it doesn't matter how many spaces you have. So I'm going to go ahead and plug in my graphing calculator just so we can make sure I'm doing this right. Basically debug. So yeah, I just plugged it in, and you have to make sure it's on. I guess I didn't specify that in the last video. You have to make sure it's on. You have a cursor beeping, little cursor thing or whatever on your calculator. So what we're going to do first off, after we clear home, basically what clear home does is erases everything on the screen just to make sure you have a new palette, or a canvas, if you will, so you don't get confused on what's on the screen. So clear home, and then next what we're going to do is prompt. We're basically asking the user, hey, what is a value? And as you know, a quadratic equation is ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. And so we want a, b, and c. We want the coefficients. So we're going to ask for a, and then again we're going to ask for b. And I guess I'll show you. You can go ahead and type it in if you want to. That's pretty simple as well. Alright, so that's the first three calls that we want. Alright, now what we're going to do is clear home again, because we don't want that crap in there whenever we're trying to compute. And literally that's all we need to ask the user. So the input is pretty trivial. Now what we're going to do is we're going to do some computation, and so I'll show you a paper here, or not a paper, but some equations here that we're going to need to use. And as you know, the quadratic formula is negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Now what we're going to do is we're going to manipulate those expressions, and we're going to turn them into our own expressions to get t equals negative b, u equals b squared minus 4ac, and v equals 2a, to get the equation t plus or minus the square root of u all over v. Now basically I'm doing this so it makes the computation a lot easier. I've noticed that most quadratic formula programs out there online are really heavy, and they have a lot of memory usage, and they're really slow, and so I'm trying to speed it up by getting right to the point. So first off, we're going to give t, u, and v a name, and so to do that we're going to take the value of b. So whatever's under the, we're going to take the value of b and multiply it by -1. Now, for some reason on this programming suite, if you multiply by -1, it shows an error, whereas you can just program it on your calculator pretty easily, and it doesn't show an error as long as you type it in correctly. So what I had to do is, I think I had to go to math, maybe character, yeah, character keypad, and I had to multiply it by we're going to put it up there. I had to multiply by I squared, and so you just put a little square on there too. And obviously I is negative, or the square root of -1, so if you multiply square root of -1 by itself, then you get -1. So that was a really easy quick fix. Alright, so the next interesting thing, let's see, I think it was, yeah, right here. Okay, so whenever you want to name variables, instead of prompting, what you're going to do is take in the character section, go to keypad, and it's going to be this little arrow, and it's basically storing. And in fact, on the graphing calculator, there's a store function, and if you click that, then it'll show this little arrow. So let's see, this one is going to be T. It's going to be uppercase T. All right, now we're going to want a equation for u. So we're going to go back to our friend b. We're going to square that, because remember, this is what was underneath the radical. And see, now we can use the negative or minus in this case, because it's in an expression and it's not, denoting a value. And so we're going to say 4 times a times c. And then we're going to store that one, and it's going to be our u. Alright, so now we're going to need a v expression, and that was underneath the, that was the denominator, so it was just 2 times a, and we're going to store that as u. It's a little touchy. And so like I said before, you have to make sure that your spaces are in the right spot, and in this case we don't need any spaces. And so, sorry, never mind. That was v, not u. Yep. Okay. Now, one interesting thing that I should point out too, the spaces, obviously if I did that, that would be an error. But you can have line spaces. For instance, you can do this all day and then write some more code, do some more, and you can do that all day and it's just fine, as far as I know. And so we're just going to put a little space in between each one just to show that there's different parts of this program. Okay, so now we need to figure out whether or not the radical is going to cause us to have an imaginary number. And so as you know from college algebra or algebra 2, if you have an imaginary number, then it's going to be I. You're going to have I in the equation. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, hey, is u greater than or equal to 0? Alright, so to do that, we're going to say if, lowercase I, if u is, and I think we have to go to test, we have to go to logic, or no, sorry, test, and we're going to say is greater than or equal to 0. So if u is greater than or equal to 0, if u is positive, then we're going to say that the radical, or the square root of u is equal to u. Sorry, we need to go up to character and then keypad, and we're going to say then the square root of u is, sorry, uppercase u, is going to be stored as u. Alright, now that's kind of weird that you have the same variable in the same expression. But trust me, it works. You're basically saying whatever u was before is now what it is now, I guess, if that helps you. Alright, so now what we're going to do is say go to z. Another thing in TI Basic, you can have labels, which are basically like areas in your program, or like functions you can call, if you will. And so saying go to z would be like going to label z. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in here so you know where label z is. So it's going to run through the program whenever it hits label z, or whenever it hits go to label z, then it'll go to label z, obviously, and it'll skip anything in here, which is good, because if we don't if u is less than 0, or sorry, if u is greater than 0, then it'll do all this and then skip to z, which is where we're going to print out the answer. Alright, so now what we're going to do is call else, which is basically the other part of this if statement. We're going to say if u is less than 0, then we're going to want it to actually, we probably don't need that then. Then we're going to say take the absolute value of u and then take the square root of that. So what we're going to do first is take the square root, and it was up here in this funky area. Square root, and then we're going to find the absolute value, and to do that you just go to math. No, you don't. Well, I guess I could show you the catalog because it's right there on the first. It's the very first function. So absolute value of u, and then we're going to multiply that by I. So we go ahead and say multiply by I. Go ahead and plug I in there, and then we're going to say that is the new value of u. Yeah, pretty simple. Now after that we're going to say go to z, because now we're done with both of those cases. If u is greater than 0, which hopefully it is, and if it's not, then make it an imaginary number. But we still need that value of the square root of u. Okay, so now that we're at z, what we're going to do is get all that crap out of there like we did at the beginning of the program. And then we're going to display stuff. And so we're going to say display oh yeah, and this is where the space comes in. Display quotations x1. Alright, and then go ahead and enter. We're going to go down, and we're going to say display display this function, and then we're going to also say display x2, and then display that function, although we want to say minus because it's plus and minus. Then we can go ahead and add some spaces down here. So plus and minus, x1 and x2. So x1 is plus, and then x2 is minus, because of the quadratic form you have a plus and minus, which is what a square root will give you. All right, so if we were to, whoops, I need my thing on. Okay, go ahead and send it. We'll go ahead and send it, and receiving. So now we're going to look at our program by going to program, hitting enter, and it should ask us, hey, what's A? And we're going to go ahead and say 1, and it's going to say what's B? We're going to say 2, and then it says what's 3? And we're going to say 1, and we should get -1, -1. And look at that, it prints out whatever our x1 was, which is obviously -1, and x2 is -1. So that's a repeated root. Now if we have if we have an imaginary number, we're going to see what that looks like. And if I don't mess this one up like I did last time, we're going to type in 4, 1, 1 to get something that looks like that. I'm going to click enter, and it's going to give us 2 values for both x's. Now it doesn't give us the whole thing, and it also doesn't put on an I, which is kind of unfortunate because We don't necessarily know whether or not there's an I there because we have this ellipses, which obviously means there's a lot more to the thing. But I know for a fact that there is an I there. And so what we're going to do is round that, round those two answers off. And so we're going to call in another function, and it's basically just round. So round, and we have to take that whole value. So get that parentheses in the whole value, or that whole value in the parentheses, sorry. And then we're going to say comma, and then we're going to enter a integer for how many decimals we want to round to. So it works great on this calculator to put in 5. And make sure you don't put a space in between, because that'll show an error. I know, it's kind of dumb. Okay, and then the very last thing that we need is stop at the very end. Sorry, capital S. Stop at the very end. Alright, so that is the quadratic formula program. Now I'm going to go ahead and send it to my calculator, and then we're going to go ahead and run it. And we'll type in the 411 like I did before. I'll show you what this looks like. Type in the 411, and this time it should give us 5 decimals, decimal places, and then an I, which obviously it does. So before we didn't see the I, now that we changed the decimals, now we do. So that's a pretty nifty thing there. Now this program is very small, like I said before. It's only like 250 bytes, and we can actually get it down even further now that the program is completely written. We can just go ahead and take off all these extra spaces, or empty lines, and that actually takes off pretty much 1 byte, which is 8 bits. In this case, I guess a space or a line is worth 8 bits. So it takes off 1 byte, so that was, what was that, like 5 or 6 bytes. So we're going to have a significantly smaller program, therefore you can put more onto your calculator. So we're going to just check again, see if it runs, upload the new one, and 411, and look at that, we get it. So let's try a couple other digits just to make sure we have it correct. We're going to say 121. This is what I got, and we're going to say enter, and look at that again, we had -1 and -1. Now let's do something really crazy. Probably going to get a negative here, but this is what my screen looks like, or sorry, an imaginary here, and sure enough we do. I and I. So yeah, that's the quadratic formula. If you see anything wrong, oh yeah, we can also erase all these just to make the program a little bit quicker. And also we can rename the program, so we can say roots if we want, and it'll show up as the new name on your program, or on your calculator. So if you go to program, and remember before this is what we had called it, and now this is what we're calling it, so I can alternate to each one or whatever. So yeah, that's how you program in TI Basic for a quadratic formula equation function thing. Thanks for watching. If you see anything that doesn't make sense in this video, please add a comment or comment, and I'll get back to you. If you see anything that's blatantly wrong, also tell me so I know how to fix it, or so I know to fix it, so I